Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 5th meeting of the Morro Bay Planning Commission. If you would all join us for a moment of silence to begin the meeting. Thank you very much. Let the record show that all the commissioners are present and the meeting is called to order, and we will proceed to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, excellent. This is time set aside for announcements. Do we have any announcements from the Planning Commission?
I have two.
Go for it.
On the overhead there, there's a fundraiser at Pizza Port on January 12th for the Morro Bay Bike Park. They're trying to collect some funds to help pay for it. There's still funding that they needed, and I was able to go out during the sunny day and enjoy it, and it's just a great community. It's just a community hub. It's turning out to be really, really, really popular, and you can see there's a lot of talent in this city. And also, I'd like to announce that tomorrow, right here in this building, on tomorrow, Wednesday at between 6 and 9, NOAA is going to be making a workshop presentation for the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary and kind of explaining what that nomination means and just to outreach, and that'll be here at the Vets Hall, 6 o'clock tomorrow, the 6th, and it'll go to about 9. Thanks.
Very good. No other announcements? Okay, so now we will turn it over to the public. This is public comment for any item that is not on tonight's agenda. Any ideas that you have or thoughts, please come to the podium, give us your name, and let us hear from you. So seeing none, we will continue moving forward. Getting into tonight's business, we have on our consent calendar only the current and advanced planning processing list. Are there any questions or comments from the commission or from staff with regard to that document? None? Okay, so all we need to do on that is just be aware of it and file it. So then we will move on to our public hearings for the night. Item number one, public hearing number one, item B1, is continued from our December 15th meeting. This involves UP0-359, a project proposed for 725 Embarcadero, and I believe that Cindy is going to talk to us about that.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. This is conditional use permit UP0-359, proposed to be located at 725 Embarcadero, site of Rose's Landing. The applicant is requesting concept plan approval for construction of a new gangway, floating dock, 7 boat slips, and a second-floor dining deck expansion. Rose's Landing is an existing visitor-serving commercial use, and the project is located primarily at the western extent of the lease site there. It is water lease site 8285W, and part of the project would also increase the water lease site size from 50 feet to approximately 94 feet. As part of the city's plan development regulations, the project requires approval in a 3-step process. Tonight's approval is the first step seeking concept plan approval, whereafter City Council would review the concept plans subject to receiving a favorable recommendation by the Planning Commission. After concept plan approval, the city requires a precise plan approval within 1 year of concept approval. I've taken some images just to give us our bearings. The previous image showed you a vicinity map of where it is located near the end of Morro Bay Boulevard and Embarcadero Road. This is a street view image from the north, and no changes are proposed to the front of the building. I will explain some of the details of the dining deck expansion in the rear in just a moment. The next slide shows a street view image from the south of the property. And on the dais, I provided you with some revised information that staff received from the applicant today. We received communication from a concerned citizen via email. We received a revised upper floor plan, and we also received a revised photo simulation that shows change in roof on the dining deck expansion. Included in this image on the south side of the building, you see the second floor of the existing Rose's Landing building. Along the south side is the existing observation deck. As part of the project, the applicant is proposing to convert this existing dining area that is for the restaurant on the second floor to be a public observation deck. And that is how it is described in the staff report. However, staff received some information today that due to a miscommunication, the applicant is not desiring to vacate all of the tables from the observation deck, but in fact retain approximately 570 square feet of tables. And so that is the 11 by 17 sheet of paper that you have before you, and it shows the location of the outdoor dining to remain. Staff reviewed this afternoon, reviewed it against parking requirements for outdoor dining, and determined the project would still comply with the parking requirements with some of the tables remaining. Considering the parking requirements for the dining deck expansion and the new dock project. However, because the tables would not be for exclusive use of the restaurant, because the tables would not be exclusively for the public and that they may be used for the restaurant also, staff is recommending a condition of approval be added to the resolution before you that would require that that table signs be permanently affixed to each of the tables, informing the public that no purchase is required to use these tables. And then you'll see in your resolution, planning condition number 7 currently states that signage be added both at the ground level of the building and then on the second floor, informing the public that this is public coastal access area, this observation deck. So moving along with the project, the property is zoned, WFPD S4, it's waterfront plan development S4 overlay. And then here is a short synopsis of the project description. As I said, the project includes new gangway, floating dock, boat slips, the second floor dining deck expansion, and public access improvements. The project was originally proposed to be just for a dock project, waterside only. The project was continued from the last meeting to allow the applicant a chance to submit revised plans to also incorporate a semi-enclosed dining deck expansion that would be on the second floor of the west side of the building. And I'll show you some visual simulations in a moment. And as a lease site holder, the applicant is required to make changes to their lease agreement, and this is the project that they are submitting with that. As part of the dock project, these would be 6 privately owned slips and 1 publicly owned slip managed by the Morro Bay Harbor Department. 10 new pilings would be installed to support the dock. The project also proposes enhancements to the existing bayside lateral access in the form of expanding the northerly entrance of the existing 8-foot access way, updating the coastal access signage to be consistent with modern standards, and then adding 4 new skylights spaced throughout the covered portion of the semi-enclosed coastal access way to brighten that area up. The second-story dining deck expansion along the west side of the building would be approximately 487 square feet, and then, as I stated, the observation deck is almost 1,200 square feet, and that would also be public access. Here's a site plan of the building, and I have some other images that will zoom in on this area, but the lease site, blue lines along the perimeter here show to you the extent of the applicant's lease site boundaries. The lease site currently stops at about here. With the expansion from 50 to almost 94 feet, the lease lines would be extended and to modify here. Project has gone through numerous changes with regard to modifying the docks in order to avoid impacts to eelgrass habitat, which is a sensitive biological resource in the bay. And the 7 slips are here, and you see that the docks have been altered to avoid impact to this area. So the actual eelgrass is shown as a result of eelgrass surveys performed by the applicant's biologist, and it shows eelgrass beds in this location, and then off lease site over in this area. The previous projects approved by the city required avoidance of eelgrass impacts pursuant to the Southern California eelgrass mitigation policy. After this project applied, the requirements changed with regard to eelgrass protection, and the applicant is now subject to the California Eelgrass Mitigation Policy, CEMP. CEMP policy requirements require not only direct avoidance of eelgrass habitat, but also avoidance of a 5-meter buffer area surrounding the eelgrass beds. So on the plans in your packet, you will see the eelgrass beds and then also a gray shaded area, and this denotes the 5-meter buffer area. There is some area of the dock, the head float, that encroaches into this eelgrass 5-meter area. And I'll get into that in some later slides too, regarding the applicant's justification for why the docks could not be modified any further. The applicant submitted correspondence to city staff regarding any further reduction to the size of the dock slips would render the project economically infeasible. The applicant's in a position where they're required to make improvements to their lease site. They originally had applied for docks that would be the standard slips that go straight across. Here you see this is the revised version. City staff also reached out to Coastal Commission staff, consulted with staff in the Santa Cruz office, and then as well as Coastal Commission's biologists regarding compliance with these new CEMP protocols. And here is another site plan image. This, I've cut off the image just showing you here at the blue lease line sites. And then here I've highlighted, in case my red pointer is not dark enough, this is the area where the 7 slips would be located. The gangway runs along the south side of the building. And then they are proposing to make some lateral access way improvements. So here with the red lines, you see, you see how the lateral access would run. So it goes around the building like that. This is an area, the circle area is an area where they are proposing to widen it. And I do have some images I took with my camera that show from a pedestrian image, like walking through this coastal access way. So if the commission would like, after I'm done with the presentation, I can show you that so you can see what it's like to walk through this. As staff consulted with Coastal Commission during the environmental processing of this application, one of the comments that we got back from Coastal Commission was that the access way seemed rather dark and uninviting, and they were concerned about a couple of things, but during the conversation on public access, they had asked if this area could be brightened, enhanced, and so you'll see in the staff report the applicant is proposing, one, to widen this area so there's not this hard right 90-degree angle as you're coming in from the north on this access way. They're proposing to space 4 skylights along this way. And I know the plans currently show tables along this western access way, and historically there have been seating tables there for the restaurant. And I did confirm with the applicant before the meeting that the tables are shown on the plans to show you existing conditions. They are proposing to remove those tables, and if there were any doubt, planning staff is recommending, has included a condition of approval in your resolution that requires, pursuant to our waterfront master plan, that there be no encroachment into the required 8-foot lateral access way. And so here you would show, or here you would see, your 8-foot lateral access way. And so that, I believe, I don't have the planning condition number right handy with me, but that has been included as a condition of approval. On the second floor, on the right side of the image, is the observation deck that currently has tables, and they are proposing to remove all tables except for 570 square feet. There would be tables here, and there would be tables here. The staff report does not mention including these tables. Unfortunately, there was some miscommunication, and after the staff report was released, the applicant's representative contacted staff today and indicated that they do want to keep some tables up there. They would not be for exclusive use of the restaurant. They would be available to all. And so staff is recommending that the Planning Commission add a condition of approval. And on my concluding PowerPoint slide, I've worded a proposed condition to put table signs on there. So the rest of the second floor plan, so in this bottom area here, and there's a red circle to help you see it better, this would be the proposed area of the dining deck expansion. It would relocate the bar area that is currently here and facing east, and it would relocate it so that it's facing out in this area to enhance the restaurant experience on the second floor. Here is a close-up of the dock plan. And this, I think, is a little bit easier to see. You see the existing eelgrass beds, 1, 2, and 3, and then the gray circles that denote the 5-meter buffer area. The green area shows the amount of encroachment into this buffer area. And these hatch lines just shows the lighting from the lighting bollards. Here are some elevation images. This is a west elevation looking at the dining deck expansion. And then this is a side elevation, so you can see that the dining deck expansion won't extend over the existing building, but will actually go over existing square footage of the building. This elevation has been revised, and on your dais there, I've provided with you a revised visual simulation. One of the comments that we received from Dr. Teft, which is included as an exhibit to your staff report, expressed concern about the compliance with the waterfront master plan and the requirement that no more than 80% of the requirement for 4 and 12 pitch roofs in the waterfront master plan. This is an existing building. It is non-conforming. The proposed dining deck expansion, the applicant is proposing it to be a hip roof to help with that. And then this is a section view showing the elevation, so the existing dining, the bar area, and then popping out that dining deck expansion, which is above square footage of the restaurant on the first floor. And then the next few slides show you the visual simulations that the applicant provided. These are required part of the plan development regulations. This is from the north side of the building, and in the background you can see proposed docks with a simulated boat tied up there. And then this is a simulation depicting the gangway that leads to the docks. In this image, you see all three things happening. You see the proposed docks and the pilings, you see the dining deck expansion, and then you see this popped out lateral access way to widen this per Coastal Commission's recommendation. And then this is another visual simulation from the south. So as you'll note that the building is here on your right, so we're on the, did I say north? South. This is a visual simulation from the south depicting the gangway and then the docks. And then here is a west visual simulation depicting the outdoor dining deck. This also shows the hip roof. And this is a visual image of what's shown on your plans, the revised sheet that I gave you. Okay, so project was subject to an initial study which resulted in a mitigated negative declaration, excuse me. That MND was circulated to the State Clearinghouse and responsible parties on January 2nd, 2015 for the required 30-day period. Mitigation was recommended for impacts to biological resources, cultural resources, greenhouse gas emissions, hydrology, and water quality. During this 30-day comment period, we did receive a comment letter from Coastal Commission, and that's included as an exhibit in your staff report. And as I already touched on, Coastal Commission identified concerns with two primary areas: biological resources as it relates to protection of eelgrass, and then acoustical impacts related to the pile driving. And then the second concern was public access and compliance with that. So as a result of Coastal Commission's letter, and in order to ensure that all impacts had been reduced to a level less than significant in order to recommend the city adopt the mitigated negative declaration, city staff worked with Coastal Commission to address these concerns. As I stated, the applicant's original dock plans had been revised to avoid impacts to eelgrass. The dock plans do show some encroachment into this 5-meter buffer area. The CEMP protocols do allow impacts to take place if avoidance is not feasible. All impacts to the habitat, so including this unvegetated 5-meter buffer area, would have to be mitigated at a ratio of 1.2 to 1 as required by CEMP. And that requirement has been incorporated into revised mitigations. In the MND, you'll see that there is some language that's in red font, and the red font that's on your in your MND attachment reflects the revised mitigation that has been added as a result of these comments from Coastal Commission. So the docks themselves reduced from 43 feet in length to as short as 14 feet in an attempt to completely avoid eelgrass. The shortest slip is 14 feet. And also included in the packet is the justification letter that the applicant provided regarding the economic infeasibility. Staff did route that up to Coastal Commission. Coastal Commission did provide concurrence to staff in an email last August stating that they accepted that the docks were mitigated to the greatest extent feasible. And then the other comment identified by Coastal Commission staff, as I stated, was underwater acoustical impacts. The mitigation measure in Bio 3 does require that a marine wildlife contingency plan be developed and approved prior to the initiation of pile driving activities, and that does include a description of specific specific methods to be used to reduce pile driving noise. And then lastly, the public access. This is discussed in detail in the staff report, but the applicant has submitted revised plans, which, as I explained, do try to open up the public access. It's an existing building with an existing semi-enclosed 8-foot lateral access. Dr. Teff pointed out that actual field measurements show that it's actually just slightly shy of 8 feet. That lateral access cannot be widened anymore because it bumps up against the eelgrass. So as you see on the dock plan, unfortunately the city's kind of stuck with that existing width that's just shy of 8 feet, and noting that Coastal Commission standard requirement is 10 feet. So with that, upon review of the plans, and I was also going to have I just wanted to call out the planning conditions. So staff has recommended numerous conditions to the project. Staff is recommending that in an attempt to improve as much as possible that 8-foot lateral access and be consistent with our waterfront master plan, that all of the tables be removed in that area. This is addressed in planning condition number 3, that any barriers such as restaurant seating or furniture that encroaches upon this 8-foot requirement be removed, and that this be reflected on the precise plan submittal, and that the docks be updated, the signage announcing coastal access signs be updated to modern Coastal Commission standards. And then in addition, the open courtyard area to the south of Rose's Landing building currently has a plethora of tables and some other accoutrements, if you will, that encroach on this 8-foot requirement. And so planning condition number 8 does require that any existing public tables and benches which impinge on this 8-foot requirement be moved for open pedestrian access, and that these tables also be signed with table signs informing the public that there's no purchase required. And then additionally, the mitigation and monitoring plan for the mitigations associated with the M&D is incorporated in the resolution. And then one other thing that I wanted to point out is that, so we did add additional mitigation. The revised plans that the applicant submitted did not result in any additional impacts that would require recirculation of the document. And in achieving concurrence with Coastal Commission, all impacts have been reduced to a level less than significant. And so with the conditions of approval that planning staff is recommending, we are recommending that the Planning Commission forward a favorable recommendation to the City Council to conditionally approve the project and adopt the MND, and that would be through adoption of Planning Commission Resolution 0416, noting that recommending that Planning Commission add condition number 10, which I have written on the screen there, which would state all outdoor tables on the second floor observation deck shall include a table sign permanently affixed informing the public that no purchase is required. And then if you would like to see the lateral access images, I'm happy to run through them. I have about 8 of them, and I'll leave that at your direction. Thank you.
Okay. Well, first of all, would you guys like for her to go through those lateral access photos? I think that's the first question.
Okay. These were also provided to Coastal Commission staff as they were trying to get a handle on this during the environmental routing. This will walk you through the north side of the building, and it will go around to the south. So across the street, looking at Rose's Landing, walking down the existing ramp there. And then, of course, this was the outdated coastal access sign that I referenced a couple of times in my presentation. Nowadays, they're white and blue. Okay, I'm turning the corner here, walking around. And then I don't have the best camera, but so it's kind of dark, but you see the tables. I know they're shown on the plans. The applicant confirmed that they were just trying to depict existing conditions, and they do intend to remove them because we don't allow tables within an 8-foot area or anything else. And then continuing, so there were some people eating there, and I didn't feel comfortable just snapping a picture of them, so I kind of went around the corner and then turned around and took the picture and ran. No, I'm just kidding. And then here I am a little further up, and I'm kind of in the open courtyard and looking over, and who can resist such a lovely picture of the rock? And then now this one's out of order, but I'm back around on the north side of the building, and the that public observation thing, I'm sorry, I'm at a loss for words, but it's off the lee side, and I'm looking toward the access way. And then in this area, of course, you would see the slips. And that is it.
Okay. Very well. So thank you, Cindy. Appreciate that Very comprehensive presentation. Are there questions for staff at this point? Jerry?
Cindy, on the first floor plaza, is that included in the dining area calculations for parking area?
Yes, they included the entire building, all existing tenants.
Okay, but the exterior, the outdoor space on the plaza, would be I think it's the north side,
Okay, so
the outdoor patio.
those
on the
tables,
first
were they
floor.
included in the parking count?
Yeah, there's tables out there, and it's pretty obvious it's a dining area.
I don't think so. I'm going to double check the parking. The architect is here. He may give some more clarity to this, but they counted the second floor observation deck. And so, no, I don't believe that plaza area, that courtyard on the south side of the building is included.
Okay, at present, there's a receptionist kiosk or desk across the front of that plaza. And is that going to remain, or is that going to be called out to be removed?
I don't believe it's going to remain. Scott and I did a site visit and noticed that ourselves. We would recommend that the Planning Commission add a condition of approval to either remove it or move it out of the way, but that would be at your discretion if you want to get rid of that. Planning did not know about that weight receptionist stand there.
Okay. Is there going to be any pavement marking to delineate the public access space along that, the vertical access space along that plaza?
They are not proposing one at this time.
Okay. And then on the, if we're moving closer to the ocean, closer to the bay, the tables, which tables are going to remain and which are going to go in the more rectangular area of the patio, where the line goes, where the grade breaks a rock. So you've got delineation of number 11 there. It says coastal access to remain. Are those tables closest to the railing, are they going to remain, or are they going to stay? Are they going to be removed? It's not clear on the plans.
Right, so any table that encroaches into an 8-foot area would have to go. Dr. Teff pointed out in his letter that I've attached to the staff report that Waterfront Master Plan requires there be some kind of railing or ropes that delineates, outdoor dining. So outdoor dining is encouraged in the Waterfront Master Plan, but it can't just spill into this 8-foot area. And
So is the dining, I'm sorry to belabor this point, but is the dining are the tables going to be located at the railing or at the building side?
I think the applicant could answer that. They haven't specifically said, they've said we would keep it out of an 8-foot area, but they didn't identify that to us, like where precisely that 8-foot line is
Okay.
going to be. So I think they can speak to that.
Okay. And is there any future plans to connect to at least site 18? There was, as I was out there, the lateral access along at least site 18 has been closed off, and you can actually see where the lateral access was, but it's been terminated by a fence there.
We don't have any applications for lease site 18. I'm not of anything aware of, even long-term, that lease site 18 would be coming up for a renewal of their lease site. Certainly, just like Rose's Landing, if it comes up, they're going to be subject to all these requirements. I mean, we want to extend this lateral access all up and down the Embarcadero. I know that that's currently fish processing,
Right.
I believe. Yeah.
Wasn't
So I
there Yeah,
Oh,
it seemed,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, there was a development plan for Rose's Landing when it came forward. Do you know if that included a lateral access along there?
I'm sorry, can you
There
repeat
was a
that?
development plan for Rose's Landing when it was developed.
Oh.
So is there a development plan that, because they had actually put in the lateral access, so is there a development plan that requires a lateral access along that location? Do you know?
I've never seen it.
Okay.
But you're referring to when the building was constructed in like 2000-ish?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the master plan was in effect then, so they're,
Right. I haven't seen anything in city files that has given me any information regarding lease site 18 or how it would have connected to how the approvals unfolded in 2000 when the building was built.
okay.
The applicant might know more about the history of their
Okay.
lease site.
Another question about the lease, about slip number 1. I'm sorry if I'm taking up too much time.
No? It's a complicated project.
Yeah. Is that considered a public benefit, slip number 1?
I would say so because it'll be managed by the Harbor Department,
Okay.
so, yeah.
It's off of the lease site? The actual slip area is off of the leasehold site? So that can they give a public benefit to something that isn't theirs? Or how is that figured in?
That's a good point. It's possible that their lease site would be, lease lines would be amended through Harbor Department and the City Council to pick up these improvements that they're making, just like the lateral access, that widening on the north end, that's going to have to be picked up in their lease plan. Sorry, I can't talk.
So was there any consideration for them offering that slip to the city for city control?
What I understand from my conversations with the Harbor Department is that the applicant offered that lease site for exclusive city use. I do see that it's outside of their lease lines. I would imagine because they'd be responsible for maintenance of that slip, that when Harbor does the lease line amendment process through City Council, the lease lines will be picked up to go around that, so it includes that they, maintain that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, not quite, but, okay. And then on slip 7, slip 6 and slip 7, there's you've got a 34-foot dock there that's only 17 foot wide, and they're talking about that as 2 slips. It seems like, the minimum width of the beam on a 35-foot boat's going to be 12 feet. So it seems hard would be to set 2 boats in there, unless one's a canoe. So I'm wondering if that should be deemed 2 slips or deemed 1 slip.
Well, just because the slip depth is that deep, they don't have to have larger boats sitting at it on that side of it. The other side would accommodate a larger boat. It's wider, in other words. So,
Okay.
you're right, but they're going to have to, lease the space to boats that fit in there. Ultimately, they only have so much room within their lease site.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, by consequence, could they then lease or what is the potential to use the north side of that dock? There's not a label on the dock for a slip 8, because essentially it's a side tie, and there, if I remember right, there aren't any other access points
Yeah, it's okay.
for the other leasehold.
Wouldn't that be off the lease site?
It would be off the lease
Yeah.
side, but we're doing it on the
Oh,
south side,
see.
so what about doing it on the north side?
Conceivably, but that would be pending city council approval of the lease line process. And here with slip 1, the public benefit is that the Harbor Department gets a an advantage. There would be no, there would be the benefit of they increase their, rentable slips.
Okay. Well, I think-
But it's not part of the proposal at this point. They're just proposing 7 slips.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you.
On the second floor where they're going to be leaving some existing tables on the north side on the outdoor dining area and in the observation deck area, do you know how many tables are going to be left there? And are they going to be, segregated out? Or are they going to be just kind of scattered throughout those 2 areas? Number 2 is table service going to be offered for those tables?
So table service would be offered for the tables with the recommended condition of approval. It would also tell people that you can bring your Taco Bell up there and you could eat that too if you want. The tables, I don't have the number of tables that could fit in this 570 square feet area. They were trying to work within their allowable parking. Mm-hmm. So, as comfort allows is how many tables would be in that area, but I think that would probably, the applicant could probably answer that question as well.
Okay. So are they there? The way it looks here is that there would be tables where it is adjacent to the building, as opposed to
Yes.
adjacent to the view area. And that is your expectation too?
Right, that's all, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Michael?
I guess my only question, Cindy, is on the dock plan. Can you go back to that? So Commissioner Lure was talking about those 2 slips on the right side, which are the south side. And my sense is that last section of dock is shown as 14 feet wide, but it's not the full depth of the site. It's only about half the depth. I think on our plans, it's showing that length is about 20 feet. So that, in fact, that corner in the lower right there, inside the lease line, is actually open water, I believe. I'm not seeing where you're, yeah. Inside the lease line, there's a corner there. Those last 2 slips are actually kind of L-shaped, so the lower right corner there, the southwest corner of the lease site is open water. So, but I was just wondering, was any concern shown about narrowing that 14 feet to pull the one out of sight dock point number 1 into the lease site? In other words, could that 14-foot width of that last section of dock to the south be made more like the 8-foot sections and take more of that water, more of that dock's point that's on the north side and bring it more into the site itself?
So in other words, like shift the slips a little bit to the right so that they all fit within the lease lines?
It's actually a smaller dock footprint all the way around.
Right. That was not considered or presented.
And then the placement of signs is at the discretion of the city on the building itself
Yes.
to demarcate where the access points are. Because I think it's pretty ambiguous on the north side that that's a way to go around.
Correct.
And that'd be my biggest concern.
Right.
So it's at our discretion, the city's discretion, your discretion.
Right.
With a better camera.
Yeah.
To get to out and place
Yeah.
this on. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
A couple things. You stated that the one public dock is going to be managed by the Harbor Department. That means that and then the other 6 private slips are going to, where is the money going to go from the private slips?
Right. So the private slips will be month-to-month slips. So the leaseholder will manage those slips himself. That's part of his lease process, is that in exchange for so many years on his lease, he redevelops the lease site. He has proposed these slips, so there'll be private month-to-month slips. With the reduction in slip size, he can, of course, only rent to certain types of boats because they'll have to fit into these slips. But yes, and then the slip one will be a public slip exclusively for Harbor Department.
Okay, and maybe you could, we got an email from a concerned citizen, and maybe you could address some of those issues. Like the first one had to do with the one slip, so that's kind of that first paragraph, that was that one issue. In the second paragraph, the citizen is concerned about the residential use and how that's in violation of the Tidelands grant. Am I not right with that?
I can answer that. I was
Okay.
just waiting for you to finish.
Okay.
So the conclusion of Exhibit D, Section 4, the comment was that it states in the MND that the project is consistent with the LCP general plan, zoning ordinance, which identifies the site as appropriate for residential uses. The project does not comprise any residential uses. They have not presented to the city that there will be any liveaboards in any of these slips. They will just be privately leased slips. I believe that might have been an inadvertent typo because the previous paragraph in this findings, mandatory findings, talks about the dock project and the water uses. And so, yeah, there's no residential uses proposed.
And then the third issue I'm going to bring up. This particular project rises to a level of a little higher fiduciary duty than we generally see in the Planning Commission as a body, because you have private residents. The Tidelands grant is given to the city by the State Lands Commission. Okay, and recently the State Lands Commission, on December 18th, 2015, they adopted their strategic goals for 2016 through 2020. And one of the big things that they're going to have is for staffing and to address enforcement issues. But more than that, this Tidelands grant, it's a public trust. And you as citizens, you as employees, you have a duty of care to not only the citizens of Morro Bay, but the whole state of California for public access and for the best usage for the future. When I look at this project and I see private docks and extension of, the feasibility or economic feasibility, we have to look at it from a perspective of as if you're an executor of a trust, that these are the Tidelands Trust lands, and adjusting the lease lines and these kind of projects, it seems to me a little bit, I understand the process, but the carriage in front of the horse is a little bit. One of the things in the strategic plan that's key element is the climate change and sea level rise, in particular the issues of how that's going to affect our coastline. And we had a tsunami here in March 2011, that issue, and how that changes the whole, changed the bay a little bit. And so right now we have it's 75 feet to the sand spit or whatever, but this is old data. And I don't see the current science, and we, as a commission, the way I look at it, need to be very careful that we do not move projects that really need to be vetted in a more careful manner, because the history that Morro Bay has already. They've had issues. That's why I'm asking about the monies. There was issues with the monies on the outfall lease, and so that and then State Lands has the ability to pool our Tidelands Trust anytime they want. And so we need to be very careful that we don't push and recommend something that puts that in jeopardy for the city and and the council as a body. And what I'm seeing in this kind of project a little bit, now the structure is one thing, but when you start pushing it out into the waterway and mitigating eelgrass and that I would say what I would like to see is and invite maybe the State Lands Commission and Harbor should be here, the director, where we could have a discussion and get a feel in open, transparent meeting where we could discuss and vent these issues, because they have to be done in simultaneously, is the way I see it. And this is a very complicated project, but we have to rise a little bit higher on our fiduciary duty when we look at this project.
I agree with you completely. Let's don't get too far into comments, though, until we've heard from the public. You know what I'm saying? This is questions. Yeah. I have a couple of questions. Number one, Cindy, the property, the street end that lies to the south of this project, the Morro Bay Boulevard street end, what is the legal status of that parcel? Is that a lease site? Is that a right-of-way? Is it city owned? It's state owned though. It's state.
I believe it's a lease. It's part of a lease site,
Okay, it's part of a lease site.
or it could be entirely a lease site. I'm not sure which, but I believe that's the case.
Okay, so then the city could choose to lease it or not lease it. That's the city's option. Is that correct? Okay, and then the existing ramp on the south side of the Rose's Landing project, the vertical access there, that ramp that goes down, that is actually on the adjacent lease site. Is that correct? So how is that dealt with? I mean, it's an improvement. Was it put in by the city? Was it put in by Rose's? How did that get there?
I don't know who put that in, because it's existing. The owner might know how it is that ramp got to, oops, there we go, along this side of the building. It's like quasi-public right-of-way, but it's not. It's a lease site. So I think the applicant might be able to, during the public comment, give us some clarity on that.
Okay, I guess. So I guess the issue that I'm getting to is the public access aspect of it. So we'll come back to that during comment. I just kind of wanted to get an idea of what was going on there. The second question is having to do with the boat slips. I mean, to me, clearly, there would be less impact on the eelgrass buffers if all of the slips were 14 feet long. Have we received any analysis? Any analysis of potential rentals, any analysis of cost versus rental income that would allow us to conclude that that's not financially feasible?
No, we didn't. Nothing that specific, other than the letter that was included in the staff report.
So we're being asked to accept someone else's opinion that it's not feasible, specifically this consultant and the Coastal Commission, because we have no evidence to make that conclusion on our own.
Other than just the review of the plans and, yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all the questions I have for right now. So does anyone else need a second round here? Okay. Then I will ask if there's any ex parte communication to disclose at this point.
I'm not sure if this would be one, but I called the State Lands. I was actually going to congratulate them on their strategic plan, and I ended up talking to a gentleman just about the width of the leases, and that was about it.
Okay.
Well, the only communication I had was, as I was on the public access area, I was asked if I could be helped in what I was doing there.
Me too.
So-
Yeah, that happened to me too. I don't know if this is an ex parte communication. I had dinner at La Vida Roca, and it was really good. Okay, so with that, then, we will open it up for public comment. We typically would like to give the applicant or applicant's representative a chance to speak first.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, good evening. My name is Steve Puglisi. I'm the project architect. I have in the audience with me Mr. Michael Dameyer, who is one of my employees, who is working as the manager of this project for me. Also, I have Doug Redican, our client. I have with me as well Mr. Scott Kimura from Tenera. He is our environmental expert on eelgrass. I have with me also Mr. Paul Gillen, Associated Pacific, who is our expert on dock construction. I'll try as best as I can to run through the 9 issues that you have recently raised. If there's anything I'm missing, and if I'm capable, I'd be happy to answer any further questions. In terms of, for item number 1, the 8-foot adjacency issue of where this 8-foot public access is to be developed, it is to be developed as close to the water as possible. So that would mean at or immediately adjacent to the screen. Item number 2, what are we doing with slip number 1? The slip itself, the dock, is entirely on our lease site. So all of the physical improvements, the piling that would hold it in place, the physical dock, the dock box, the electrical connections, water line, that is all on the lease site. What we are doing is providing that dock to allow the city and the public being managed by the city to tie up to that dock on city property. We derive no benefit from it whatsoever. We are simply providing the city the opportunity to have a slip space that could allow visiting boats to tie up with the permission and organization of your harbor department. Item number 3, slips 6 and 7. Yes, they are unique in shape. They're only 14 feet apart, the docks are. What are you going to put there? We're going to put kayaks there. That is the entire purpose of having that. Why are we selecting that area in particular? The Van Buren lease site immediately adjacent to us, I do not know how long their lease exists, nor do I have any idea how long the fish processing operation there will continue. But what I will assure you of is they need every consideration possible on our part to not exacerbate their ability to move boats in and out of their processing opportunity. As a result of that, and also in consideration of the existence of eelgrass in that area, we have tried to design these kayak spaces to make them as short as possible to let boat maneuverability for our neighbor to work best. These were not randomly thought up ideas. Item number 4, 570 square feet of the patio area on the upper level. How is that going to be used by Mr. Redican's tenant, the restaurant operator upstairs? 570 square feet translates to, for quality dining, nice dining, about 20 square feet per chair. So that would allow approximately 28 seats. You can skinny that down to 15 square feet per, which could allow a few more. But in general, when architects plan for dining, inside or out, 20 square feet per chair is about what we would end up with. Item number 5, shifting docks. It's a unique thing for me to be in the audience enjoying the detail that you want to go into about the configuration of the docks, their exact lengths, their widths. I have to admit to you, this is the way this is going to work. We have now conducted 2 complete eelgrass surveys. This involves putting divers into the water, doing lots of work, spending lots of money. We have also conducted what we refer to as a windshield survey, where Tenera went out, low tide, took a pretty good look of what was there, but not officially, because they did not officially dive the site. Those eelgrass studies, they have an effective lifespan, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 months?
Depending on the time of the year, they're needed to be done in the active growth season. If they're done at the beginning of the growth season in the spring, they're only good for a couple of months. If they're done later in the growth season, in August, October, they're almost good to the following next spring.
And politically, they must be done within how many days of start of construction?
About 60 days.
60 days. Where we're sitting today, ladies and gentlemen, we will be going from tonight, if this project is approved, to your city council. We will then press on, because this is original jurisdiction, to Coastal Commission. We're not going to get a permit, and then we come back to you for a specific plan. Not only this agency, but also, I believe, City Council, Scott? Don't have to go to City Council just here?
Correct.
Perfect. But look at those events. From tonight, we're going to the City Council, then we're going off to Coastal, then we're coming back to you. We will then have the ability to start construction. There will be another comprehensive eelgrass survey. I'll promise you something. Whatever you see on our drawings tonight, it's not going to be the same. That eelgrass is going to move. It might disappear. It might grow. Whatever. It's not going to be what you see tonight. So when you see us coming back before you, you're going to see a different plan. Those docks are all going to have to move and adjust, and we will have, from that date, a 60-day window to get back in front of you, make sure that Coastal is happy with what we're doing, and get Mr. Gillen out in the water building. So please be a little generous with us on what we're doing. Now, why it's important to me to hear your questions is so when the time comes after that next dive and we see what has happened to the eelgrass, I can pay attention to each and every one of you of what you're asking those docks to do so I can best adjust to accommodate you. But it is going to change, believe me. Item number 6, residential and liveaboard. There is no residential use on this project. The first comments the coastal staff told me when we proposed this several years ago, these slips will be for transient boaters, period. They will be probably 30-day. Coastal Commission doesn't want liveaboards here. They want to provide visitor serving opportunities. That's the purpose of these boat slips. Item number 7, access off of Morro Bay Boulevard, the extension. Yes, there have been improvements made there. When Doug, and I was the architect that worked with him back in 2001 when we rebuilt Roses, we had to provide access, public access, and ADA compliant access. With the permission of the city, we worked off-site on the city's lease site adjacent to us to perfect that pathway and ramp. That was part of the permitting process for the Roses Landing reconstruction. Item number 9, feasibility reports. Our feasibility expert is in the audience. He's Paul Gillen. He knows how to build the docks. He knows how much they cost to build. He also rents docks. He knows what they're worth. If you have questions about feasibility, he's going to be the guy. If you have questions about eelgrass, Scott's here. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay.
More public comment, or do we ask questions?
Why don't we, if you wouldn't mind, what we usually do is take all the public comment, and then we'll save our questions until the end of that.
Absolutely. Thank
There
you
may
very
be
much.
other questions that come up from other members of the public.
Very good, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak to this issue?
Betty, I'm very sorry, I have a bit of a cold. Betty Winholtz. I did send you some comments today, and it's been very enlightening being here this evening to hear comments. I think, and I came to add a comment, which I think has been reinforced by the previous discussion about eelgrass and how things are going to shift, which is very interesting to know. I think it points out for me a bigger picture that is probably not a discussion for tonight, but what is it that we're doing that's forcing our leaseholders to have to get bigger and bigger and further out into our water or a space or whatever, that maybe we need to relook at how we're doing these projects or what leases are worth, and that this kind of future conflict between nature and man is just going to get worse if we continue to think that things have to get bigger and bigger in order to be better and better, and to be worth more and more for a lease site. So maybe that's something that can be addressed on another level at another time, but I think that this is probably what do they call it, when you're the thing that is the example for that item. And so what is it? It's something like that, or the poster child for how things are going to get worse if we don't address a more basic issue here, which is how far do people have to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Winholtz. And I have to say, you don't have a little bit of a cold. You sound like you swallowed that yellow guy from the Mucinex commercial. Okay. Anyone else that would like to comment? Okay, so then do we have questions for the group of experts that we have before us here? This is a great resource.
Maybe to staff, maybe to your eelgrass consultant. Do we have a global plan for the bay? It seems like part of what Ms. Winholtz is alluding to is what we're doing here is we're trying to work around a moving object. And with structures that are going to be here for 50 years or so. This is the economic viability of the city. It's important to have docks. It's important to have transient, slip sites. This is important. I have no, I would like to see more of them. But it seems like for these small areas of eelgrass we have here, they're both islanding situations and they're not a cohesive environment. Wouldn't it be better to take a half acre or an acre in the back bay and develop a cohesive, integrated eelgrass site that we could then use to mitigate all of this development on the Embarcadero that's now and is coming in the future? So, both to staff and to our expert here.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners and staff, my name is Scott Kimura, Tenera Environmental, and your point that you raised is spot on. A comprehensive management plan for eelgrass in Morro Bay is definitely needed. And I started to have discussions with the City of Morro Bay, and I included other resource agencies and permitting agencies about a year and a half ago, and to try to bring the attention of our little conundrums that we get into here with development along the Morro Bay Embarcadero, where you'll have one project with a little dock being started just like we have here,
potential impacts to eelgrass, and then with conditions of how to deal with that. And it ultimately can involve restoring habitat, restoring eelgrass if you do impact eelgrass, which can lead into a whole nother set of costs and responsibilities by the applicant in terms of all of a sudden now the applicant is turned into a restoration specialist instead of a restaurant owner or a kayak or gift shop owner. And it would be nice to have something larger that everybody can kind of share in a program in dealing with these impacts. For the specific project, but until that happens, though, each one of these projects gets taken on a case-by-case basis individually with the permits from the city and with the Coastal Commission and the Army Corps of Engineers. And ultimately, they roll into conditions stemming from the California Eelgrass Mitigation Policy. It was a Southern California Eelgrass Mitigation Policy, and your staff did an excellent job describing the situation with eelgrass in regards to this particular project. One thing I would like to add, just for clarification, that one of the difference from the Southern California Eelgrass Mitigation Policy, which changed to the California Eelgrass Mitigation Policy in October of 2014, one of the large changes was a definition of eelgrass habitat, because in the past, we needed to not only address the impacts to eelgrass itself, but what about the habitat for eelgrass, because that could get shaded or that could get buried by a break wall or seawall or breakwater. And in the Southern California Eelgrass Mitigation Policy, there was no really definitions or criteria, but the CEMP, the California Eelgrass Mitigation Policy, does have criteria. Now, it's that 5-meter buffer zone that your staff, Cindy, was talking about around each existing patch. So when we go out there and map eelgrass, we also include this 5-meter perimeter around it, which is the area that eelgrass can typically expand and contract, and it's going to move around. So when a project is taken and it looks at the footprint of that dock project or the overhanging wharf or boardwalk, to look at what's going to shade directly the eelgrass and also that perimeter buffer zone. Now, ideally you want to avoid covering any of that, but sometimes that can't be done. The next step would be to avoid directly overshadowing eelgrass itself, but then you might not be able to move your docks or shift your wharf or boardwalk to not occur directly over that 5-meter buffer zone. What's allowed, though, that if you do have to cover that 5-meter buffer zone, the mitigation, it could be 1.2 to 1, but it might not necessarily be having to create an eelgrass bed someplace else, because what you've done is, all you've done is covered up bare ground, which could be potential eelgrass habitat. So the mitigation for that might be something like, it could be more of out-of-kind type mitigation. And it could be something like find maybe some derelict boats that you can pull out of the bay that would increase habitat for eelgrass. It could be something like that. Also, if that encroachment in that buffer zone, if that were to occur, it might not require the follow-up annual monitoring that's required by the CEMP for these type projects. There's a lot of monitoring that's going to be involved with this. There's going to be another pre-construction survey, and that's going to serve as the baseline. So if it's not like exactly what those maps show, which that survey was done a couple of years ago, and these surveys have a certain time limit. They're not good forever, so they need to be updated and refreshed. What we've done is we know that there's eelgrass out there, and we know that we're going to have to deal with it some manner. That's all we know right now. And so we're planning to have the ability to with Associated Pacific Constructors, come up with a quick alternative dock plan if we need to. So the dock plan may likely change from what you see here. So there will be another pre-construction survey. Then there's going to be another survey 30 days right after construction is completed to look at what direct impacts occurred from, say, pile driving, that sort of thing. If there's no structures that directly overshadow eelgrass, but it overshadows the perimeter buffer, We can then go to the table with the permitting agencies and discuss how to mitigate those impacts. We won't be necessarily required for 2 annual monitoring surveys to determine direct impacts to eelgrass, because we haven't directly impacted eelgrass. We impacted bare ground where eelgrass could occur. So, so there's a lot of dynamics involved, and I would encourage anybody to contact me at Tenera for further questions if you have, any concerns.
Another question, or continuing on that vein, is how effective of a habitat is a 5-foot diameter or 10-foot diameter patchy eelgrass? It doesn't seem like it would be a lot of habitat to foster, a fish nursery or
yes,
protecting.
There's a scale involved, and in the Kemp, I believe there's also at a point of 10 square meters of eelgrass. If your project is going to directly impact 10 square meters or less, agencies would be open to looking at alternative forms of mitigation. But if it's larger than 10 square meters of eelgrass, the policy right now states that you've got to roll it over into a restoration program, which involves transplanting and monitoring for 5 more years with performance criteria every year. And if you don't hit those targets, you're not done. You have to keep transplanting more. So it's a serious commitment by these applicants once they get into this. And so there is concern of the eelgrass here that we have to be really careful about.
Has there been any successful eelgrass implementation areas elsewhere in the bay here?
Yeah, right across on the sandspit for your mooring area A1. There's been, and for the transplanting resulting from the maintenance dredging of the channel entrance. So there has been restoration work in the front bay. A lot of the restoration work that's been going on in the back bay, where we've had a tremendous crash in eelgrass, those transplants have not survived. So there's a lot of dynamics going on with eelgrass right now that has scientists kind of stumbled right now.
Do we have enough available area to create a eelgrass sanctuary in a viable position in the bay to make it work, so we could create a mitigation area?
I think that should be explored. Excuse me. That should be explored, but I think it needs to be put together with a consortium of people, the city, commissioners, the Morro Bay National Estuary Program, National Marine Fisheries Service, California Department of Fish and Wildlife. It would need to get a group of people like that around the same table to come up with a plan for Morro Bay, for an eelgrass management plan that incorporates dealing with potential impacts that occur along the Embarcadero from this continued development and making new docks and adding more boardwalks, et cetera.
Okay. That's enlightening. Thank you.
We may not be able to do that tonight, though. Other questions, Richard?
I got a question for you. Thank you for your presentation. I was wondering, the back bay, you were saying that there's some challenges there. I know that recently, well, this is now the second time, but recently we had a CMC spill that spilled right into the East Morro Bay National Marine State Marine Reserve. So I know that that's the second time that has occurred. So I think those fines are going to be set, hopefully accordingly. But that impacted area with the eelgrass, I'm wondering if you have that area being impacted, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, but a few years ago when the Army Corps was doing their dredge, didn't they dredge and take out like Coleman Beach and a bunch of eelgrass at that time too?
Yes, they accidentally over-dredged.
Yeah, and so this estuary has gotten hit pretty hard with eelgrass impacts. I like the idea of not, like being able to mitigate something like that, like what you were saying. But the estuary is being impacted quite heavily already, and I just wanted to kind of state that.
Yes, as a scientist, everybody's looking at each other of trying to figure out what has caused the decline in the back bay. And we all say to each other, I mean, that's the million-dollar question. There's a lot of, whether it's water quality, sedimentation. There's also Gracilariopsis, that's a red algal species that has blossomed in the bay that could be preempting space for the eelgrass back there. Cal Poly does now have a Sea Grant program and an advisor at Cal Poly, and that's an avenue of funding. And they have some programs as we speak of starting to look at, hopefully causing, looking at the eelgrass issues, ecology in the Back Bay area. And that is a good thing. So there's a lot of attention on the eelgrass in Morro Bay right now.
Just out of curiosity, I recently, last year, went to a conference regarding fisheries and the effects of El Nino. Could you maybe expand on, is El Nino a factor, like warming of the water, have a factor on the eelgrass?
Well, in parts of Morro Bay, eelgrass, when you look at El Nino effects, you're going to start seeing things on a really broad regional scale.
Right.
Not just here, not just there. It's going to affect everything.
Yeah.
And what is happening with eelgrass in Morro Bay right now, despite the large decline in the Back Bay, and because I've done so much work in the Front Bay and along the Embarcadero, it's doing really good along the Embarcadero for the most part. So in terms of an El Nino effect, I don't know if the evidence is there, if it's really affecting eelgrass in Morro Bay per se, but the argument is still out there. There could be an influence.
Thank you.
Other questions?
And if you can do some eelgrass prophecy for me, when I'm looking at the Google Earth image of the harbor edge, these docks are going to be put out almost to the limit that we have to the channel, and it looks like this is the first project to push that far out for maybe a block on either side. It looks like on the north and to the south, eventually we get out near the edge of the channel with the docks that have been constructed, but this will be the one that's sticking out the farthest in the immediate area. When we start to hem the eelgrass in, is there a strong chance that it's going to be conserved, or is the docks on both sides, if the city would build out the docks to the north and the adjacent owner at some point builds out the docks to the south, does that extra construction and berthing of boats, does that tend to enhance the quality of the eelgrass production, or does it tend to cut down on the eelgrass production?
Well, shading is an important factor that negatively affects eelgrass. So when you do have docks and boats using those docks, you have shading that comes into account. So where there could be eelgrass right now, once you put a dock in with boats, that could be the impact. That's why there's desires to keep the dock footprint not directly overhead of eelgrass, so that the boats and the dock aren't directly overhead. And along the Morro Bay Embarcadero, putting the docks further out away from the shore, there's no eelgrass further. It's all along the fringing at the toe of the revetment. That's where it's all at. And if you just walk down the Embarcadero, wherever there's no docks, there's probably going to be eelgrass, but where there's docks, there's not going to be eelgrass. And then where there is eelgrass in those docks, it's going to be here and there, here and there. But then anything deeper than about 9, 11 feet, mean low water, is you're not going to find any eelgrass, which is out along the Embarcadero. That's the distance from me to you. It's a very narrow strip.
So in theory, based on your best judgment, the adjacent owners, whether it's the city developing the slot that's there or the adjacent owner eventually developing, in all likelihood, they would be pushing out farther because there's likely eelgrass production near the bulkheads there now. And so we'd see the other docks pushing out to the limit as well in order to avoid potential eelgrass in the future.
Yeah, I think in the ideal world, although as a dock builder or a dock operator, it might not be practical, but it would be more practical to have all the docks way far away from the shore. But that would be put it out in the navigation channel, and then also where the currents are really strong. So that would probably be impractical.
That's what I was getting at, because my concern is that, well, this is still comment, but the one thing I'll say is, if you look at the larger city plan at the docks, this project's getting out there farther than anybody adjacent by a considerable distance. And even though the images don't make it seem like it is, it's actually going to stand out, I think, substantially. But if it saves the eelgrass, that's why it's moving out. We're not trying to gain slips by moving out. We're saving eelgrass by moving out.
Right.
So in all likelihood, if eelgrass remains an issue, future docks adjacent are probably going to be pushing out as far as to make it economically feasible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all. Thank you.
To the applicant, or actually, I'll let you off the hook now. The architect or applicant. My biggest impression when I was visiting the site was how uncomfortable or uninviting or as accessible the public access was. There's no public access signage at the front of the property. It's all at the rear of the property. So you have to actually transverse the quote-unquote public areas before you get it to any signage. And on the present plan, I don't see any signage further out either. The other thing, so I guess, the covered walkway also seemed more like somebody's living room than a public access way. So what else do you think you could feasibly do to make this site much more inviting for the public to transverse it, and also for you to have an economically viable project?
Great question. Signage, there's not a whole lot to that. As Scott and Cindy will attest, Doug is amenable to whatever types of signs the Coastal Commission will instruct us to install. We're happy to do it. We won't propose anything because, believe me, the Coastal Commission staff will tell us what they want, what color they want it, how big, and where. As far as the aesthetic, I have never considered what should be done with the path. You must appreciate my client, Doug Redican, when he took over the lease. Douglas, when was that? 1987. That Rose's Landing site that we're talking about, the water, the lease site, that's what contains the bar. That's what contains the boardwalk, the 8-foot public access in front of it. That was all constructed in 1975, prior to Doug's involvement whatsoever. It had a roof on it when you took over the lease. We've replaced things, we've fixed things. Doug is also promising that he will not put any tables and chairs out there. It is going to be an 8-foot corridor. Doug, do you think we should consider taking the roof off the thing?
Well, I think the skylights work. If you want to just take the glass off of it so that they can go through the water, maybe take the glass off. I don't know. I mean,
What? If I could make a suggestion, I think we're getting a little far down the road prior to our really discussing it. You
Okay.
know what I'm saying? I think this is maybe a
Well,
little further in the process.
Yeah, I thought this was appropriate for public comment, though. I'm sorry.
Well, we could reopen it if
Okay.
necessary. I did have one very specific question, which is will the docks be wheelchair accessible, and if so, will that depend on the level of the tide?
Yes to both questions. As I remember, and I had the pleasure of speaking with the gentleman that actually wrote the book on accessibility with, I believe it was, let me think here for just a moment. It's not, it is a state agency that controls those docks. Scott, can you help me out by any chance? What agency I may be talking about? It says Roy Tuniosi was the boss of this, so this would have been Boating and Waterways, yes. Thank you, Paul. The guy that wrote the book on accessibility, how to design these docks, was involved in my first effort to work on especially the gangway. With the limited number of docks we have, we're allowed to have a gangway. It just floats up and down with the tides. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, you have, I believe, 50 is the magic number, Paul? No, for the number of docks before you are obliged to, then you actually start coming up with some strange articulated stuff. So the answer to the question, does it meet ADA standards, both state and fed? Yes. Can somebody in a wheelchair actually navigate that thing at a low tide? I doubt it.
Mm-hmm. At a high tide?
Probably you'd be a much better because you're going to have a much shallower ramp.
Yeah, obviously. Okay. Sure, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to kind of go back to the parking, and this said that there would be creates a requirement of 88 spaces where there's a total of 107. And if you look at the tables that are going to be taken away on the walkway, I think there's 14 tables, but you're going to add at least 28 on the second floor. Are you still comfortable it's going to meet all the parking regs?
Yes, because the way that we calculate the parking requirement is by square footage. So for that upstairs observation deck, the requirement is half of the indoor space requirement, which number-wise that is one parking space for every 90 square feet. And so the calculation is 570 divided by 90, and you get 5 in a fractional number of parking spaces. So by keeping the tables on the second floor, that increases their parking requirement another 6 spaces. So that 88 that's on the plans goes up to 94.
Okay.
And they have a count of 107.
Thank you.
Good question. I will ask one other question, and that whoever feels most qualified to answer this, answer it. How did you come to the conclusion that this was the minimal amount of impingement on the eelgrass buffer that would be feasible, financially feasible? How was that computation made?
With Paul's help, we looked at what is the dock going to cost. We know how many pilings. We know how many square feet of product. We know what the installation costs are going to be. Paul is very instrumental in letting us know from firsthand experience what we could expect in rents. How much do big boats get? How much do little boats get? How can we reconfigure the docks to create the least impact on the eelgrass and still have something viable? What you're seeing in front of you right now is pretty much that magic balance. Mm-hmm. If we were to try and, you'll notice for an example, the gangway itself, there is no way that gangway is going to come down from the Embarcadero down onto the water without going through
Obviously.
one of those buffer zones.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. So we've given it our very best effort. What we will continue to do when that next dive, when Scott gives us the next bit of bad news, we will come in and try again to reconfigure those docks. How we've set this up with coastal staff thus far, and Cindy or Scott, please correct me if I'm wrong, they know what this ballet is going to be like. And the idea is we're trying with you folks to start to come up with the idea. Okay, you get X number of docks or X number of feet of docks, and you are encroaching X number of square feet into the 5-meter buffer area. We now have a calculus. When I come back in front of you with a new eelgrass study, we're going to try and meet or improve that calculus and not go backwards. But that's a commitment that we personally need to make to one another to make sure that we're just not wasting our clients' time and money.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On that, you mentioned that slips 6 and 7 are going to be for kayaks?
Primarily, yes.
So are they going to be charged? Like, how much do you charge a kayak?
Oh, yeah. This would probably be some type of a concessionaire that would come out, rent the space, and then rent kayaks to the public as they come in and out.
Oh, okay. So it'd be like a guy that has a business that he would have. Okay, and then you would sublet. Okay, all right. I got that. And then I forgot what my other question was, but okay.
I'd be happy to come back if you need it. Thanks.
If there are no other questions, then we'll close public comment, bring it back to the commission for discussion. Who'd like to lead off? The brave man.
No, I think that the heritage of the town is, the harbor waterfront's a gift. It was largely built by other entities that we get the advantage of. We have these wonderful people that want to come in and invest massive amounts of money in it. It's an urbanized front of a special type that we've been gifted to take care of. And my sense is that we're doing a reasonable job of trying to accommodate the ecological things that are happening there. I don't know when the channel was prescribed. Typically, a waterfront has a channel or some kind of navigable zone. I think the assumption has to be at some point, economics are going to push the waterfront dock construction to that edge, the full length of the bay, unless we say something else. And we're spotting these points where the local unique ecology is from what I'm understanding, thriving and potentially will remain thriving. So we've accommodated an ecological situation, we're accommodating an economic situation, we're doing the things to get more visitors in. I think the city is a long way from having maxed out its capacity at the bay. I think we're still in a position where we want to grow the harbor edge. So I think I can live with this the way it is. I think the 8-foot is a difficult thing. I would say opening that up, whether it's taking away the glass or relooking at the rail system, I think likely would make it feel different. Even though the glass is transparent, you do feel a sense of enclosure. And I think there's something about walking the edge. I do like to walk the edge down there on occasion, and there's something about that freedom at the edge. The glass may be an impingement. I do think the signs need to be there so it's very clear that this is public access. And I think the upper deck, removing, making the public area nearest the deck edge, I think is reasonable. We aren't asking for a lot of, we aren't asking for any new square footage in the footprint. Outside of the footprint, we're maintaining the footprint. We're getting more advantage out of the existing footprint. So I think that's the way to gain value in the building, is to rethink the footprint rather than keep pushing the footprint. And the footprint of the docks goes out because of the ecological situation, retaining the eelgrass. So I think there's been reasonable accommodation of the different needs here. I don't see it as a natural area like other parts of the edge that we could discuss. And I think it's a leasehold site that the city needs as an engine driving some of its economics. So I'm willing to listen to other positions, but I'm pretty happy with the project.
Richard?
I have more of an issue with the process. And I think that using a project to set a baseline for ecologic mitigation regarding if it's eco gas or whatever isn't the proper way to handle that. I think, and also we're setting a precedent here. I think that here's the continual problem that we have. The water master plan, what, 1996? Something like that, right? And then general plan, even older, right? I think that if we need, and I feel for the applicant, he's got to bounce from here to there to then back over there. And, you know, if we, as a body and as staff and as city council, as a body, can come and the harbor department get all on the same page and have dialogue, then the applicants don't have to set baselines and set precedences. They're going to have to expand leases. I think that we really have to be very, very extremely cautious from our fiduciary duty with regards to any tidelands grants. And I think that I really feel that we need to get more input from especially with the strategic plan going in the direction at the State Lands Commission. They're going to be staffing for enforcement, and we don't want problems later. And the city already has a couple of issues. One of them was the outfall lease with regards to monies, where the monies were going, and then the other one was improper noticing on a acoustic test. So that was recent. So I really feel that we as a commission have to bring it. It's a process issue.
It's a project.
Jerry?
I've got a couple areas of concern, and probably the primary area of concern is lateral and vertical access to the walkways. Everything going into the lateral access is really tightly constricted, and it doesn't feel comfortable. While I was walking the site, there was actually a couple of women that were attempted to go through the patio area to get to the bay, and they got about 10 feet in and got really uncomfortable and turned around and went back. And I was only there for a short amount of time. So I think we need to improve the lateral access and the vertical access to this site. And one of the suggestions I might make is, and this is just a suggestion, but to come off the observation wharf at the end of Morro Bay Boulevard and to do a slightly inclined ramp to pick up the access at the off-lead side of the ramp that's going to the bayside walkway there. So this would be at the north side. Along the rock revetment, you could actually do a fairly easy span there, and it would be ADA, compliant, because the elevation change I don't think is that critical, but that would actually be the best slope you could get. And then that would give you a lateral access to the observation wharf up above, and would give you a much more straight line shot to that bayside walkway area. And I would like to see the glass, and I would like to see, the roof. Personally, I would like to see the roof taken off of that area. I think it gives you the connection to the environment and makes it feel more like you're communing, you're enjoying the bay rather than having that glass facade, which is always dirty and it's old and there's a lot of maintenance and a lot of upkeep, and also you have bird strikes that are a consideration on that too. And then on the south side, I would like to see a consideration to look into what is happening on lease site 18 as far as their developmental permit and the CDP that they filed, to see if not make that connection now, at least plan for that connection for future development. So what we do now on this site will then make that connection to the next site when they do come in for a development. As far as vertical access, it is really hard. It's really uncomfortable going through that patio area. So whatever we could do to delineate the walkway through there with concrete staining to make sure that that's a clear public access, a clear public walkway, minimal amount of expense. I think it could be really improved a lot. So that's my concerns with the access to the Bayside site, and that's our biggest treasure on this. With the bay, that's what brings the people in. That's what they want to see. So those are kind of my suggestions on that, and I would like to see what the commission and staff feels about those. And the other thing I'm concerned about is the tendencies, even unintentionally, of leasees maximizing their space, because this is expensive lease space. You have a restaurant area that the ratio of prep area to serving area is about twice as big as it would normally be for any normal size restaurant. And so having built restaurants and having designed them and caterers and catering restaurants and stuff and having worked in them, there's a lot of area there for prep area as far as seating area. So the leasee or the concessionaire is going to want to maximize that space by putting more tables out and stuff. So it's going to be a concerted effort by the city to keep those areas clear. And the other part is the access to the upstairs observation deck is actually, it doesn't even show it on the plans here, but it is actually back in and around a corner and then back up, and you kind of wind around to get up to this observation deck, which is not signed at all that it's really the public access and a public access area, a public observation deck. So that whole deck, I think, I could easily see being expanded out into, tables and benches and stuff without a management program for it. And I don't know how the city plans on managing these areas so they maintain a public access and stuff. If it's just complaint driven, or if there's going to be a inspection, or...
Well, if you're asking, do we have a program to go around and do it? No. Are we paying attention to it right now, and are we going sort of systematically through these? Yes, we are. We just recently had the area opened up behind Stacks. That was an area that was a public access space, and we contacted the owner and said, hey, it's supposed to be open, so we need to put a plan together. And he worked with us, and he actually was very quick in doing it, and much appreciated that. So yeah, we are paying attention to these things, and when we have these lease sites that come forward, we're also looking at those components to this. And it's one of the reasons why you have conditions in there for signage, and then maintaining that access path. And those are things, I think, over time that maybe the city in the past has not paid attention attention to, but it is on our radar now to pay attention to these things. And I've had discussions with the harbor director about including language in the leases related to these types of things. The way we review leases now is different. It used to just be the harbor director on his own, but now, these sort of lease redos and projects coming forward are reviewed by myself, the city manager, deputy city manager, and the harbor director. There's 4 of us now that take a look at these things. This is all stuff that we've just recently implemented. So I think our feeling is maybe the city hasn't had this high on the priority list in the past, but that's changing. And so my comfort level in telling you that, yes, we're going to be keeping a much closer eye on these types of things, and we regularly internally have discussions about, what are the current conditions for other lease sites. We are discussing those and talking about those. Okay. It's a little bit of a moving thing, and it's, trying to kind of roll it out there as we come across it. But yeah, I mean, we're definitely spending more time on it.
Could we include on the signage, underneath coastal access, saying if obstructed, call.
I think we probably could. The only caveat I would give to that would be I'd want to talk to the Coastal Commission about it. They're very specific about the types of signs and what they like on it and what they don't. And so
maybe a little placard underneath their sign.
Separately, yeah. Maybe if it was separate, maybe, or just us talking with them. We have a decent relationship now, and so I'm not opposed to anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm not implying anything on for the owner and stuff. It's just I know how if you're paying X amount per square foot, you're going to put another table out, and it's just going to kind of grow. And so I'd just like to see that it maintains, open.
I agree with Commissioner Lucas. This is a nice. It's a nice design for Morro Bay. It does incorporate, keeping the eelgrass where it should, healthy. It also, I think it's just the docks, upgrading the dock area, building new docks. I think it is going to be very important for Morro Bay in order to get transient boats in here. There is not a whole lot of places in Morro Bay for transient boats to dock and then walk and enjoy our wonderful city. The one area I am concerned about, and I think it's been echoed throughout this whole commission, is that walkway. And I have actually walked it and felt uncomfortable going through it because I feel like I'm bothering diners. And I think it's important that it is opened up. And I would certainly support removing the glass, even the roof over the top. That's not as important to me as removing the glass that gets a little steamy when people are there. It's just normal. And it just makes you feel enclosed, and just to give us a nice walkway. Those are my comments.
Okay. As far as the dock design, I have no issues with that whatsoever. I am convinced after hearing from the applicant's representatives that they have done the financial analysis, that they have looked at the feasibility of what they're doing. I do want to say for myself, in the future, I will be looking much more closely at the word feasible, because it seems like in the past we've seen the word infeasible thrown out as a synonym for I don't want to do it. And as a commission, it's our responsibility to determine if something is feasible or infeasible, and we need to have the data to make those determinations. It just because somebody stands up at the microphone and says it's infeasible does not mean it's the case. We wouldn't allow somebody to stand up at the microphone and go, well, it doesn't exceed the height limit. And the same thing is true with respect to financial feasibility. I have, and the other thing that I would like to speak to is also the issue of public access, and the usability of the public access. I think that one of the things I'd like to disagree with staff on here is, I think that what we're seeing here is in terms of the current arrangement, is the blurring of the line between public access and private access. Okay, and so I would really not be in favor of having signs up that say no purchase is necessary to eat at these tables. No, number one, it doesn't work, okay? Number two, if you sit down at those tables with your lunch, the waiter's going to come up and say, what can I get? You're going to feel uncomfortable, okay? The place that currently, and then we have experience, the place that currently exists is Giovanni's, and it's very nice that they have those signs up there, but if you walk through there, 99.9% of the people sitting at the tables have got food that they ordered at Giovanni's. So you can say it, you can put it on a sign, but that doesn't make it happen. And so I would just as soon not blur that line. I think, however, that a lot of the solution is in the waterfront master plan, because what the waterfront master plan says is, page 5.5, sidewalk cafes, outdoor dining is encouraged. Said dining areas shall be enclosed in permanent low see-through railings or fences. In other words, you've got to, and that does work. We see that at House of Juju. We see that at the wine place in the boatyard. They've got a little seating area that's fenced off, and it works fine. Everybody knows where the public access is, where the tables are, and that's what I'd like to see in this case. And I would like to actually see a condition that when this comes back for precise plan review, that the location of the private seating areas and the location of the railings will be shown on the plans. In terms of improving the lateral access, I have maybe an alternate to what you were suggesting that might be a little less expensive, and that is if you look at the northern end of the site, where it abuts up against the street end, there is a fairly wide concrete area in the area that's labeled E bench that comes very, very close to the ramp. Now, there is an elevation change. There'd have to be a couple of steps put in, okay? But you've already got the accessible access going down that ramp. And to me, if that were just connected with a couple of concrete steps and a two-step railing, that would bring people through that little parklet and into that area, and actually would do much, in my opinion, would do much more to opening that up than cutting that corner off there. And that would be, Jerry and I could go down there with a wheelchair and do it in an afternoon. I mean, wheelbarrow, not a wheelchair. So I would, I'd like to consider that as maybe a mitigation for the fact that we've got narrower spots in other places. In terms of removing the glass, which would be relatively inexpensive, the only thing I would suggest is if we put that in there as a condition, there is plenty of room in the area that's immediately to the south of the existing restaurant area, that little patio out there. There's plenty of room for a few tables there, and I would expect to see some with an appropriate railing around them and the only suggestion I would have is perhaps allow the tenants some discretion with regard to the wind screening in that area, because it's much more comfortable. If you walk by Blue Sky, you notice that at least 75% of the time it's the tables inside the windscreen that are occupied. So if we ask for removal of part of that glass, I would think maybe it would be appropriate to allow them to leave some wind screening in that area and covering. And so that's, and as far as the second story, the tables on the second story, again, the reality is, you can put up signs, but the reality is nobody is going to go to the back of the building, climb up the stairs, and open up their little sack lunch. I mean, maybe maybe a few locals would do that occasionally. But I just, and I don't think a lot of people, there will be some, maybe, with good signage. I don't think a lot of people are going to go up there to use the observation deck. I mean, it's just, you got to climb a set of stairs. I mean, that's reality. So, all I would say is, put as much outdoor dining out there as you want. Leave a small area adjacent to the bay, maybe 8 or 10 feet wide, for an observation deck, but realistically, in my opinion, unless the city is planning to hold charitable events up there or something, the rest of that space is going to be wasted and might as well be used by the restaurant. So whatever they can get in there in terms of meeting the parking requirements, whatever area they can encompass for use by the restaurant, I say, God bless you, go for it. So that's, I just would like to see clear delineation between public areas and private areas, and, allow them as much private area as is reasonable, and maybe if we could get that relatively small improvement in public access on the north side, that would be a great public benefit.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about the roof is, initially I thought that might be a cost element, but if you're going to build that prestige bank of seats up above, getting rid of that foreground of roof and opening up the view down toward the bay is probably actually a better thing for the seating up above. And it would make it open a little bit more too. I don't feel I want to necessarily be prescriptive about how it's done, but I agree the north access could be improved greatly, and whether it's somehow connected to that public parklet or some kind of bridging, I'd say that's something that we should suggest improving. And I'm all for the demarcation that you're talking about, Dr. Teth, between public and private. And I actually do share some of your concerns about, I'd rather see generating money for the city with access to the seating up above than it's sitting idle. But I do think it'll be like the other examples we noted. People will buy something there and choose to eat it there. So I'm not concerned about that, but I'm in total agreement of glass roof, looking at the access and the demarcation.
Anybody? It's free for all now.
Actually, I agree. I still think we have to open up the walkway. I think this is the park. The city owns that park, right? The adjacent parklet. So it would have to go through the city and get them involved in what you might be doing on the north side to improve. Yeah, because it's really not part of their lease at this point.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But it's not, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not uncommon to require off-site improvements if there's a nexus between what you're asking for and the project. And in this case, there's clearly a nexus because it's improving the lateral access all the way across.
Absolutely.
And it requires, amendment to the lease and review and approval by council.
Yeah.
So you're basically making recommendations.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I'm in support.
I want to bring up one more issue, and that is, what was mentioned here was that these slips are going to be for transient boats, 30 days or less. It's going to take a pretty hardy soul to, transit in from around Point Conception and Point Arguello with a 14-foot boat. So, I'm wondering how, is that a condition, that these are going to be 30-day minimum or 30-day maximum rentals?
At this point, no. My understanding, and again, Scott, Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding in discussions with coastal staff, monthly. The idea there being, if somebody wants to come in and stay for a longer period of time, that's fine. But the deal is, it is on a month-by-month basis. So if someone else wants to use that slip, their name goes onto a waiting list, and as one of those months expire, that next person in line comes in. What Coastal doesn't want is to have us create slips that become an exclusive use for a boater. That's the whole idea. If there is not a demand, a request to have a new warm body come along, then whoever is there, if they want to extend their lease for another month, that's perfectly okay. But we cannot create exclusivity.
Okay. Good. And then, the 14-foot slips, you're getting into a hand launch situation there. Is there going to be people that want to keep their 14-foot boat in the water as opposed to launching it off the boat?
I must admit, when Doug and I started this, I think I had a full head of hair when we started this job. And Paul, very instrumental in helping us. We were looking at boat slips to begin with that were in the 35-foot class.
Right. That's what I would have.
The eelgrass is what is killing us.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And do you have any issue, or what do you suggest? As far as delineating the pathway on that the ground floor patio, so that becomes more of a clear access, vertical access to?
I think your observations and your recommendations are spot on. In fact, even broaden the thought for a moment. To the north, at Morro Bay Boulevard, you have a terrace patio public area that is unfettered. The public is very comfortable walking out onto that deck. Truth be told, that is exactly what the southern aspect was supposed to be.
Oh.
When you see all of that furniture, now albeit
Right.
the little movable stuff, that's creep of the tenant. We get rid of all of those tables and chairs that are sitting out there right now, as we've illustrated, because they're not supposed to be there. But everything else you see there, the walls, the concrete benches, the big concrete tables, the planters, much as I hate to admit it, this was a coordinated effort on the part of then city staff and the landscape architect attempting to create a public patio, a public plaza, yet we all, as we walk through it, somehow get a feeling that it just doesn't feel all that public, and it's supposed to.
Yeah.
As far as creating either with the steps or the bridge, steps are probably going to be a little bit cheaper, but doing that bridge span, I think that'd be a very simple thing, very straightforward. Of course, the first thing you look at, oh my, guess what? It's shading. It's digging into that eelgrass area. Now here again, depending upon how Scott and Coastal Commission see this, since that shading is going to be occurring on the north, if you will, side, northeast side, the chance of sunshine coming through that early in the morning to feed the eelgrass, that ain't going to happen.
Well, we could
it's
actually
on the best side to do that.
It could actually be over the rock revetment
Yes.
rather than at the, rather than a straight shot. I would see it work.
Make a jog. But the whole idea, instead of forcing the public onto these little corridors, getting them to move quicker, more simply, I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Well, great. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more thing, just so I'm clear, the economic feasibility, that's for the docks, that's why you're wanting like 6 or 8 slips. You need the numbers.
Yes, at least as many. It's actually more a factor of linear feet than it is the exact number of the docks.
Oh, okay.
But
as opposed to having 2 40-foot slips or 45.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what makes that so unique, just a couple of big boats would become most likely problematic to get a good short-term rent. If we could do it yearly, it'd probably be the easiest thing in the world for us. But we
Right.
know Coastal's not going to let us do that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, they're going to force a turnover.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the other thing, one other comment that I should have made before but forgot to, several people have made it, which is the fact I think signage is critical, and it's, pardon my disrespect, but it's too critical to leave to the Coastal Commission. I think that we absolutely, when we get to the precise plan stage of this, we need a very specific sign plan. We're the ones who walk this area every day. We're the ones who know what the pedestrian. The Coastal Commission. I've probably walked around these public accesses 2,000-3,000 times. I mean, literally. The Coastal Commission has not, and I think the things like the importance of the sign on this ramp at the south side here, they may not pick up on those. We need to see that sign plan as well, with considerable detail. So let's see if we're getting consensus on things here. I think that we're looking for ways to improve access, improve the connections between the vertical access on the north side of the building and the existing pedestrian amenities at the street end. I think we've talked about a couple of different options for that. I think we're looking to see that the public access spaces and private dining areas are not intermingled, but are clearly delineated. I would suggest enclosed with a railing as required by the waterfront master plan. I think we're asking that the glass and/or the roof be removed from the lower level lateral access along the bay, to the extent that that is compatible with outdoor dining at the southern end of that area, the private dining facilities that are likely to be located in that area. And I think we're asking that the precise plan include a very specific, detailed sign plan with locations and illustrations of both the commercial signs and the informational signs that will be on site. Have we something else? Yeah.
What about my consideration about linkage, future linkage with lease site 18? An investigation into that.
So that we're asking that the precise plan.
So are you asking me to look at what the status of lease site 18 is? As far as what's the length of the lease, when is that coming back? Because at 20 years out, I don't know that we're really probably getting anywhere with trying to design something now.
No, it was there was actually some construction there on the end where the fish company is now, that actually had a quote unquote master plan railing out there. So that made me think that there was a development plan that had lateral access along there. So I would just like, maybe staff to look up the development plan for Rose's Landing and see where either elevation change there. So if there's something we could do on this site that would more easily accommodate it while we've got this development plan here, to easily make the linkage to the next side over with lease site 18, or what we would have to do that. If it's not in place now, then what we would need to do, so that that's spelled out, when that site comes up, that Rose's Landing lease site is already planning for that.
Would it be, just to go back to kind of Richard's idea of needing to plan more globally,
Right.
is this the kind of thing, because we've mentioned in this commission before that the ideal thing would be to have all of these observation platforms at the street ends linked up with the lateral access behind the commercial sites. And is this something that we would actually look at maybe for the entire Embarcadero as part of the waterfront master plan, redoing the waterfront master plan with the general plan process?
Yes, it would be. I think, though, I'm not opposed, from a staff standpoint of looking at what we have in place right now over here to see where we can go. I'm looking at this right now, and I can see with the eelgrass locations, the gangway is kind of limited right now where it can go. So bringing access over there is not going to be real simple. In fact, it may be kind of uncomfortable because you're going to have to maneuver around the gangway.
Right.
So obviously we should look at that. I think we should look and see what we have, if there's something in place or some idea that we've not looked at to this point. I think that's certainly fair. And then we can report back, on that during the precise plan process for you. And if we find something, we'll reach out to the applicant and say, hey, we got a little bit of, we might have a problem, or we have something that we weren't accounting for in this, and we'll pick it up, and we'll do that actually maybe before we go on concept to council. So you can give us a direction to look at that, and we can report that to council as well.
Okay.
So maybe we'll do that. That's probably the better way to do it.
Yeah, that would be good, because I think part of our name is planning. So
we're asking staff to do that, not the applicant.
Right.
Yeah, no, that seems fair, and we should do that anyway. Now that the issue's been brought up, I was kind of unaware.
So would it be appropriate then, the 3 or 4 things that we just mentioned that we kind of have consensus on, would it be appropriate then to just put those in as planning conditions that, coming back with the precise plan, these will be addressed, and sort of leave some flexibility for the applicant to address them so that they can perhaps deal with Coastal Commission and, all the other
Well, and I mean, if you add them that way, then too, we'll also report that to the council. Say the planning commission is asking for the applicant to address these. The city council can, give us the head nod that yes, this is what we want to move forward, or make changes as they see fit, and then we'll report back to you on what those changes were, both from the council, if there are any, and from the coastal commission when it comes back from them. So you'll get to see all that for the part of the precise. Does that make sense?
Right. I guess. I guess I was just asking the form. Would these then be planning commission conditions that would be added?
Yes, you want to add.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then staff had one that we wanted to add as well, right? Didn't you have a 10th or 11th?
Oh, the table signs one. Although Chair Teft was not so much interested in that.
Yeah, I was suggesting that we not require the table sign.
It may come back when it goes before coastal, but you don't have to add it if you don't want to.
We kind of addressed this a little bit, but maybe I'm looking for a little more clarity, is maybe doing more of a trade-off of giving them more of the observation deck and having them clear off more of the patio area, to do basically a land swap there, because I would see that patio area as the architect noted, that would be a much more usable area for the public space, for public usage, than the second floor observation deck. So if it's...
Well, the only issue is that there's different businesses downstairs and upstairs. I think we've given the applicants a lot of direction in terms of the discussion. Okay, in other words, basically, we'd like to see the 8 feet that is adjacent to the water be the public access way. We'd like to see the area that's going to be private to be planned. I think we were pretty much in agreement that we really didn't care how much of that upstairs patio they took, as long as they leave a little observation,
Okay.
a relatively small observation area. But those kind of points of discussion that we've come up with would be recorded in the minutes, right, and would be passed on to the council.
Well, I think you should simply incorporate that into whatever your motion is to move this forward, is that you want these items addressed moving forward. I mean, and we will make that happen in the form of conditioning and whatnot, so.
Yeah, the 8-foot thing, kind of, Cindy already covered that, didn't you, in your the 8 feet adjacent to the water, you kind of already covered.
Yes. Your first thing, though, you said was improve connections between lateral access on the north side of the building and existing pedestrian amenities at the street ends.
Right.
So if you're referring to develop a bridge or extend that lateral access on the north side, that's not really clearly delineated in the conditions.
Oh, no, we're saying we want to add those
Right,
conditions
yeah.
that we specified.
So
Yeah.
I added 5, or wrote down 5 conditions based on what you just said. So we would
Okay.
just, they would be, I have 9 in the resolution, so now you'd have conditions 10 through 14. I would report to City Council, 10 through 14 were added by the Planning Commission, and they are, with, some discussion
Okay.
explaining them.
So just to be clear, could you read those
Sure.
back to us?
Okay, so I just read proposed condition 10. So the second one, public access spaces and private dining are clearly delineated and enclosed with railing as required by the waterfront master plan. Number 3, and I would clean up the grammar, of course. Number 3, glass and/or roof to be removed to the extent compatible with the outdoor dining facilities located at the south end of the lateral access, that existing dining there.
Yeah, on the first floor.
On the first
obviously.
floor,
Yeah.
yes, that's understood. Okay, number 4, precise plan to include specific sign plan with both commercial signage and public access signs. And then the last one, there was the discussion between Commissioner Allure and Scott, but essentially staff to investigate lease site 18 and examine existing development plans for Rose's Landing to accommodate, I wrote elevation change to ensure accommodation, to ensure it accommodates connection to future lease site 18. I was writing really fast by then.
Yeah.
Spell it out clearly.
But we didn't get the one about, did we get the one about we didn't get the one about the north end, did we?
Well, that's, I think, picked up in number 1. So you might, which I just read, improve connections between lateral access on north side of building and existing
I'm sorry.
pedestrian amenities
Yeah,
at
we
street
did.
ends.
You did. I just.
You might want to be, yeah.
You know. Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? Any further comments? Do we have a motion?
I'll try. I move we approve resolution number PC 04-16 as modified by new conditions 10 through 14, as discussed. Is that enough?
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Sorensen. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, may we have a roll call?
Commissioner Lucas.
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski.
No.
Commissioner Luer.
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Aye.
Chairperson Teft.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you.
Okay, our next item, it's now 8:30. Would we like a 10-minute break? Now, there's something that we agree on unanimously. Our next item that we will be discussing will be item B2, which is case number UP0-433. And due to the proximity of my residence to this site, I'm going to have to recuse myself on this one. So when we come back from the break, Vice Chairperson Sorensen will have the chair. Makes it easy transition.
Yes.
Oh, Lord.